Okay, so a short and sweet sequence to take care of lower body. So we're going to start by doing a calf stretch. And what I want you to do is slide this half dome, or it could be a folded and rolled blanket, over towards the right, and then step your right foot so that the ball of your foot is on the surface of the dome. Then your heel bone will be on the floor. And then once you have that, put your left foot in line with the right one, and you can stand with your feet at about a pelvic width distance here. And we're just going to take a few breaths as we do the first side and then the second, and then we'll do them both together. But I want you to get a sense of, as we start this, since we're going to aim this towards taking care of the knees, is that we're not turning the thigh in. I don't know how well that shows up with this camera angle. But that right leg is not turning in or bending at the knee at any amount. Leg is straight, kneecap points forward. And what I want you to start that from is lifting that right arch. So you might even press just a little bit more on the pinky corner of the foot while you're standing on this. And we're going to give that a couple of inhales and a couple of exhales. And you might find it useful to take your left foot and to step it forward by some amount. And if you opt to step that left foot forward, just make sure you're still keeping the arch on that right foot lifted. Okay. If you step forward, let's step back, and we're going to swap that over to side two. So sliding the dome over towards the left foot steps on. Right foot is in line with the left one, and they're about your pelvic width apart. And as I look down from above, what I want to see here is that when my left foot is standing on this little hill, it's pointing straight forward, that I haven't turned the heel in or out, and I haven't turned the whole leg inwards. That's more common than outwards. So as I look down, I'm kind of exaggerating it for a moment. My kneecap is sort of pointing over across the room on a diagonal. So I want to get a sense here that that thigh turns out. And I'm doing that again by lifting my left arch. And I'm adding a little more pressure to that pinky corner of my left foot while I'm standing on this dome. And again, we'll give it a few moments. The next version, if it makes sense, is to step here, that right foot forward by some small amount. So it's almost like you're taking a little bit of a walk in place. And we'll give that a few more inhales and a few more exhales. Again, keeping that left arch lifted. You can really keep both arches lifted, but be especially mindful here of this one that's on the dome. Okay, then let's step off from there and center it ahead of you and have a pair of blocks so that you don't end up straining and hunching your upper back to make this happen. I'm going to go from the side so that you might see that easier. But I'm going to step both of my feet on the dome here. And again, heels are down, but feet are parked uphill. And we'll start just by standing and getting a sense of what it feels like to have length coming down the back of both of your calves. And then from this, we're going to take a forward bend, but I want you to keep a long back. So instead of rounding over, flexing the spine, maybe even bending the knees to get the fingers down, you're going to keep the legs straight and you're going to tilt the pelvis as far forward as you can with the back straight and the legs straight. And you can see here, when I come to this, the blocks are on their tallest ends and I'm still up on my fingertips. So I'm not trying to get low at all. And if even that felt a little limiting, you could stack your two blocks on their tall ends and have even a taller support. So the purpose of this is not to reach low, it's to really lengthen from the Achilles tendons at the ankles all the way up to your butt bones. And then notice while you're here, same cue for those arches. I'm going to look down for a moment and see if my knees are rolling in, if my arches are dropping. And I'm going to work here to lift the arches up, point my knees forward. And just like before, I might find a little extra push on the pinky corners of my feet to make sure that that's happening. All right, and then from here, hands to hips, and we're gonna come all the way up to standing. So for this, I'm gonna use this little patch of wall space and practice a forward bend that only moves my pelvis forward. So that way I'm truly stretching my hamstrings. For a lot of us yogis, when we do a forward bend, we do some of it with the pelvis and then a lot of it with the spine. And it's not problematic necessarily, but it doesn't really utilize the full range of the pelvis. So here's what we do. I'm going to stand at the wall and I've got my butt on the wall and my feet are forward by a good distance. Let's say that's like 12, 16 inches forward. And what I'm going to work with here is hands around my pelvis. That's just kind of a tactile reminder. And I'm going to envision here that I'm spilling my pelvis forward. As I tip forward, what I want to feel is that my backside, my butt is sliding up the wall till right about here. And you might stop sooner or past where I stop, where it's like, if I want to go any further down, it's not because my butt is going up the wall, it's because I'm reaching or hunching for my upper back. So I'm just going to stay long. And again, raise the arches, point the knees forward. And then I'm going to come back up. Let's do a couple so that we can get a little bit more acquainted with what's moving and when. So hands on the hips, that's just to kind of help the pelvis along. But I'm going to tip my pelvis forward, which brings me out into that long back, sort of like a half forward bend in Ardha Uttanasana, and lift my sitting bones up the wall. And right about here, no more. If I want to get lower, it's going to be because I drop my spine or I reach with my hands. And I just don't want to engage with that in this particular exercise. And then we'll come back up. And let's do one more. We'll hold it a couple moments longer. So as you come forward, it's just your sitting bones sliding up the wall. That's all, that's it. And then right about here, again, that's my end point. I can't go any further with my sitting bones. Then I'm going to hang on for a couple of breaths. And then I want you to notice for yourself if you're clenching your quads, and I want you to soften your quads in this pose. And then we'll inhale, we'll come all the way up to standing. All right, so we're gonna do a couple of these one-legged balance postures. Let's start with a block, and you're gonna have it on its flat side. And we're going to begin with the right foot on the block. And your heel will be on the block, even though your toes might hang off past the front of it. Get myself so I don't end up off screen. Okay. And there's a couple of details we're going to think about. So the first pass at this, we're just going to organize those details. And then when we do a second set, we're going to add some mobility to it. So the first one is just kind of organizing yourself, but you're going to look down from above. Puts you in bad posture for a moment, but we'll live with it so that you can see from below, or see below from above rather. And I want you to get a sense here is that on the block, you need to have your foot pointing forward. It's really common that the heel will turn in, toes will turn out, but I want you to swing your heel out until your toes are pointing straight ahead. Everyone's foot is shaped differently, but you might imagine that as sort of like the outside of your foot is almost parallel to the outside of the block. It's probably not perfectly so, but that's just a kind of a good general bit of guidance. And then from there, I want you to notice if the right side of your pelvis, because we're standing on the right leg, if that has turned forward. So you can see here now my hips are kind of pointing on this diagonal off the side of my space, and I want to face my pelvis exactly forward. So that's going to mean the right hip comes back. And that's probably something you'll need to check on several times in a row because it's hard to do. Yeah, right. So your foot's pointing forward, your right hip is coming back. Now I want you to think about here lifting the right arch, making the outside of the right foot heavier for the next couple of breaths. Toes forward, pelvis forward, arch lifted. And we'll leave it at those 3 points for the moment. All right, it's working. And let's come down and do the left side. So left foot on, make sure your toes are pointing forward, that it's not a situation where it's like, you just kind of use the most efficient movement, which is the movement you do all the time, right? So if what your foot does all the time is turn the heel in, then in this moment, you gotta get that little bit of strength, and it might feel a little less efficient, but you're gonna be building that new hip strength. So my toes are pointing forward. And then from here, Noticing again, when you're on a single leg balance pose, as we are currently doing, it might be that your whole pelvis twists in the opposite direction. So what I want you to find is when you're on your left leg, you'll probably have to pull your left hip back and back and back until your hip points are exactly pointing forward. All right, so foot points forward, pelvis points forward, and then we'll think here about keeping the arch lifted on that standing left foot. And that's the 3 points we're going to organize for the next couple of breaths. Toes pointing forward, don't let the heel bone hop around. Pelvis pointing forward, I came off of that a little bit, so I'm going to pull my left hip back. And then trying to keep my arch lifted as though the outside of my foot, the pinky side of my foot, is made to be just a little bit heavier than the inside edge of my foot. Okay, so come on down and let's go back to that right side. We'll organize those 3 things, and then we're going to add that movement. The movement is called a pelvic list or a hip list, and it means your pelvis starts level and then the standing leg side slants down lower. So this is an exercise I teach quite a bit because it's really important for those muscles on the outside of the hip. So here we go. Right foot on the block, toes point forward. Hips point forward, and I'm thinking about lifting that right arch. And I'm just going to kind of nail that for a moment, make sure that it's in there. Then, and this is not a big movement, or at least it isn't when I show people, I'm going to take the right side of my pelvis and try to slant it down lower. So what you might notice is like I've got a gray shirt and green pants, and the hem right now is fairly straight across my body. Then when I do this motion of slanting the right side down, you'll see here that now the right side of that shirt is lower than the left side, but only by an inch or 2. And then I'm going to come back to level. Let's do a few of these. So slanting down on the right side, woo, and then coming back to level. Down on the right, and then back to level. And we're going to do 100 million, just kidding. We'll do a couple more. Toes point forward, pelvis points forward. And I'm trying to keep that right arch lifting as I go down on the right, level on the right, down on the right, level on the right. And I'll do a couple more here. And last one, I'm going to hold, really trying to pull down on that right side of the pelvis, woo, balance, arch lifted, pelvis facing forward, toes pointing forward. All right, let's go ahead and come on down. So shake it off and pause. And I just want to show how not to do it, because this is a common mistake that people will make. And what they'll do is, and you can just watch for the moment if you care to, is they actually begin to recruit the opposite side of their body. So when I do this, it's not so much that I'm using the outside of my hip like I'm trying to do right now. It's that's hard to access. So people go to their left waist and they kind of do something like this. So you can see that the movement isn't that different. The idea is that I get a little bit unlevel, but instead of using like my rib cage, I want to use the outer hip. Woo, on fire. All right, so let's do side 2, making sure that you're not recruiting like a whole other package of stuff, that you're using the outside of that left leg. And you could feel it from hip, butt, thigh, knee, all the way down to the ankle and shin. So heel bone on, toes point forward, pelvis points forward. Again, it's probably you're going to turn towards the right when you're on your left leg. So think about pulling that left hip back. All right, and again, you can notice this across like the color of the clothes that I'm wearing, but right here, my pelvis is about level. What I'm going to work on doing is bringing the left side of my pelvis to come lower. It's a little bit harder side for me to show that on. And then back to level, and then slanting down and back to level. And we'll do a few. And again, remember, it's not the other side of the body kind of hoisting up. It is the left side of the body pulling down on that side of the hip. And it's like a snapshot. It's a fragment of what you do when you walk, or what you could do when you walk. Some people don't actually use their outer hips that much. We'll get a couple more in here. And all the while, toes pointing forward. We won't let that left foot hop around. Pelvis points forward. I'm trying to keep the arch on that left foot lifted. Last couple. And then I'm going to hold this next one. And again, the movement isn't so big, but it feels big. All right, let's go ahead and come on down and you can shake that out. So set aside the block, and once more, let's use this half dome, half foam roller. You're gonna have the flat side facing up, the round side on the floor. And we're just gonna use it because it's unstable. And when you're standing on something that's unstable, that's wobbly, we're gonna try to make the hip resolve the lack of balance. So I'm planting my whole foot on here, and same thing, as I look down, I wanna get a sense my foot is pointing forward, not turning the toes off towards the right. And then as I come onto this, it's a little tippy, and it's basically just gonna amplify what my body was doing. So if I was like shaking around a little bit, it's really gonna shake around because this thing underneath me is just gonna kind of wobble even more. And you don't have to be perfectly still, that's not the point of it. But what I want you to find is that every time you can, you're gonna let it land slanting down towards the right side, like the outside of your foot one more time is like pressing down into the floor more. And it doesn't mean that's where you stay. It's like you shake and shimmy the whole time. Just whenever you can control it, you're letting that outside of the foot push down. So that's not that you need to have it perfectly level, but you tip it down towards the pinky side. And you're probably in motion the whole time, which is perfectly fine. And we're just gonna make sure that we're not trying to throw myself off balance, and I did. We're not using like the shoulders off to one side, and we don't have the hands up, but you're more or less vertical, and your lower body just kind of has to keep on moving, doing a dance. All right, let's do the other side. So left foot comes on, toes point ahead, arch stays lifted, pelvis points forward. And again, as you get onto the side, it's not that you're done with the pose when you totally are perfectly still. No, we want the movement. We want it to be a little wobbly. But you're going to try, every time you can control it, tilt the dome down towards the outside edge of that foot. So it's like the pinky side is slanting down every time you can. And of course, the whole thing's in motion. And then notice if you are tipping your shoulders in one direction or the other, or you have to put your arms up and out. And you want to imagine here, like if someone only saw you from like your belly button to the top of your head, they wouldn't know that you are standing on something wobbly. Like you want your lower body to resolve this. That shouldn't have to include the upper back, the upper body, the arms. I mean, it might, but we're working on it. All right, go ahead and come on down from there. Okay, so we're going to use the TheraBand, that elastic band, a few times. I'm just going to change the camera angle slightly. We're going to be in a side-lying position. I make that easier on myself by having a little bit of blanket down. So if you're on a carpet, you might not need it, but this makes a bit of a difference to me. So we're going to slide this band around both legs, but above the knee, unless you feel like it's more comfortable in another position. You can stay up on your elbow. Some people are happier to come down and kind of tuck their arm underneath their head. I'll stay up a little bit here. And you can have your knees bent. And when your knees are bent, they're going to swing forward. And this first set, we're going to do 10. I'm going to keep my ankles closed, but I'm going to raise and lower my knees. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We're going to pause at 5 and hold up. And I just want you to make sure that when you're doing this, you're not also turning backwards. So I like to put my left hand in my imaginary left back pocket and push that hip forward. And let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, and last one, and hold. And again, with that hand in your back pocket, make sure you're coming forward. Ooh. All right, and then come on down, take a pause. The second set, you're going to lift the whole leg at once. So when you work with this one, you want to make sure you kind of got your coordination together, that it's not like heel and then knee, and then you're not wobbling up and down. And we'll also do 10 here. With that hand in my back pocket, I'm just going to prevent myself from sort of turning back or twisting back, but I'm facing forward. And then we'll do 10. Oh, I don't like this one. 9, 8, 7, 6. We're going to pause at 5. Hold here for a moment and take the whole leg higher. And then back down. And then 4, 3, 2. Last one. And again, a hold. And again, make sure you're not twisting back at the pelvis. So bring this left hand into your hip and push forward. Ow! And then come on down. All right, third version. I'm going to slide this down towards my ankles. So I'm doing a set of 10 of these 3 exercises. I'll turn over in a second, we'll do the same thing. But feel free to like pause and then add another set or to revisit this at another time during the day. So this is down towards my ankles. It ends up being much looser, so it just kind of works a little bit differently. Back to side lying. And then on this one, I'm going to keep my knees closed and my foot will come up. And actually, I might slide that up a little bit to like my mid calves. That's going to be a better catch for me. So knees together and then foot apart. Oh, changed my mind, back one towards the ankle. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and pause. And then on this one, notice if like you're rolling or falling forward, and then with your left hand on your left hip, roll back. And 4, 3, 2, and 1, hold. I'm trying to kick up even a little higher. I don't have much more power for that, but I'm trying. All right, and then come on down. So let's do the other side. Again, you could do another set right here. Pausing the video and then moving along when you care to. So coming over to lie down on my left, bringing this back up around lower thighs, around the knees. The temptation when we do this first one is kind of to like twist back. I'm exaggerating it, but you might see what I mean, because that kind of can open the top knee. So what we'll think of instead is like right hand on like the back of your hip and pushing forward. We'll do 10, 9, ankles are closed on this one, 8, 7, 6, and we're going to pause at 5 and hold up here. And again, make sure that you're not turning back. It's almost like this top knee is reaching forward. 5, 4, 3, 2, last one we hold. Oh, and 1, come on down. I'll keep the strap in the same spot. And this one is to raise and lower the whole leg at once. And same thing, since it's sort of like an up and a back movement, the pelvis often begins to mobilize, but I want you to feel like, again, you're not moving from the hips. This is just your thigh moving in the hip socket. So we can really grab the outside of the hip strength. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We'll hold at 5. Sorry, I almost forgot to. Holding 5 and pushing up a little bit more. And down to 4, 3, 2, and last one and holding. And can you make the outer knee and outer ankle level? So it's not one or the other above. Oh, up a little higher and come on down. Okay, so the last one, it's kind of the, it's, you know, I wish the band could be tighter on this one a little bit. So it comes down to like a smaller body part, meaning it offers you less resistance. So when you encounter the resistance, you really want to kick into it. So knees are close, ankles open. And then on this one, the temptation is to kind of roll forward. So you might keep the hand at the front of the right hip and pull back. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, oops, 5, and hold. And I'm really kicking up. And again, I can't put much more power in this. Oh, and down. 4, 3, 2, the final 1, and hold. All right, let's go ahead and come onto our backs. Again, pause there if you want another set. Take this again just above the knees. Set your feet out like for a bridge pose, say to Bandhasana. And you're going to lift the hips just a couple of inches off of the floor. Your left leg will stay still. You're going to tip the right knee open and bring it back in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Hold open at 5. You might be standing slightly on the outside of your right foot. That's totally fine. Press in through both feet and lift up 2 inches at your hips. And then we'll go back and do a 4, 3, 2, 1. You can come on down, take a breath. Elevate to a low bridge pose. Right leg stays still, left leg sets in motion for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Holding here again, you're probably on the outside of the foot, that's fine. Press in through both feet, lift up a little bit higher, but not from your ribs, from your hips. 5 to 4, 3, 2, and 1. We'll come back in and come back down. Again, you could certainly do a few more sets right there. So a little sequence for you with some calf stretching, getting some space, some hamstring stretching, servicing the back of the knee with some stretch, and then a couple of really great hip strengtheners. Okay, hope it helps.